Nice and loud, Baruch Hashem. Okay, morning. Welcome, everyone. We are on Daf Samech Dalid, Amud Aleph, 64a. 64a, about third line, to be exact. Third line from the top. Um, we're going to continue with this topic of a woman or a man who is moredes, mored, refused to cohabit with the wife. Go on and discuss other aspects of the Mishnah before we get to the next Mishnah, even hopefully today. We'll get to it, up to it. Okay, so before we start, following story. It's a famous story. I never said it, I believe, so you may have heard it. So, but it bears repeating, so it's a good one. So, Rabbi Pesach Kron is the source of this story. That's where I heard it from. In Eretz Israel, many years ago, there lived a family, and they were not religious. They were not religious at all. But they lived somewhere out there. I don't know where exactly it was. And somewhere out there in Israel. The closest school that didn't require taking a bus was for their daughter was a religious school nearby. Now, it may have been a time when people were afraid to get on buses. Now people are afraid to get on buses, unfortunately. And the mother was very fearful of her daughter, who was relatively young, traveling by bus. To us, people who lived outside of Eretz Israel, that sounds like a normal thing. Like, it's normal to be fearful of letting your 6-year-old travel by bus. But here it's kind of standard. But so it's unusual. This woman was afraid to let her daughter travel by bus to school. But the problem was she was not religious. The only school that would allow her daughter not to travel by bus was a religious school. And I think it was like a chinuch atzma'i kind of school. A little more, they took everyone kind of a situation. It's going back years, maybe 30, 40 years, 40 plus years. So the mother decided, she went down, she signed up her daughter for the school. The school says, we're a religious school, I see you're not religious, perhaps not the best, we're happy to take her, but, maybe you want something a little bit more, appropriate. And I said, no, I want to go to this school. I want my daughter to go to this school. So if we found you, no problem, we're happy to take her. And she says, no, that we're going to teach our regular curriculum. We're going to teach, about the halachot and the laws, Shabbos, and keeping kosher and all that stuff. And all the kids in the class will. Your daughter might feel a little bit left out. But, well, this is what you want. I want my daughter to be close. Okay, so the mother signed up the daughter for the school. But she told her daughter, this is a religious school, but we're not religious. What they say there, they say there, in the factories, the war factories in the United States during World War II, had signs on the walls that said, "What you see here, what you hear here, stays here." That's yeah, this is for keeping correct. So the idea was that what she told her daughter, what you hear there, you see there, stays there. What they teach you there, that's nice, but at home, you don't keep Shabbat, you don't keep kosher, we don't do these things. So the daughter went to school. As the year progressed, she starts learning more. Young girl, maybe first grade, and she's learning about Shabbos, Shabbat, and she's learning about various things. She's asking your mother questions. This, that. How come we don't light Shabbat candles? How do we have Shabbos candles like everyone else? Such a nice thing, right? It's a nice thing. Mother says, what they do there is them. What we do here, we do different. That's it. So kept going week after week. One week, the daughter decided, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. I want to light Shabbos candles. My mother's not doing it. I'm going to light Shabbos candles. So she saves up her agurot or liras, whatever it was back then. I don't know what it was back then. And she goes to the local makolet. People really 40 years ago, they didn't really have supermarkets so much. So that's the local makolet. And she says she wants to buy 2 candles for Shabbat. And the makolet guy, who's not a religious family, says, well, this girl must be confused. She doesn't want Shabbos candles. She wants Yurtzeit candles. That's what she wants. Keep Shabbos. And Yurtzeit, everyone, keeps that. So he gives her 2 yurtzeit candles, two little ones. He takes them home. She's all proud of herself in her little bag. And then, Erev Shabbos, she learned how to do it. She got matches. It's pretty impressive. She goes in the room and she lights her yurtzeit candles, Erev Shabbos. And she lights with the lights the yurtzeit candles. Let's see in here. She lights the yurtzeit candles. And the mother notices that the girl's not coming out Friday night, whatever the family does Friday night. I don't know. Whatever. And she knocks on the door. She comes in. She sees 2 yurtzeit candles there. And the mother knows what yurtzeit candles are. She's like, all suspicious to begin with. Like, what's going on? What are these yurtzeit candles for? She says, no. She says, I lit them for Shabbos. One is in honor of my mommy, and one's in honor of daddy. And the mother almost fainted off the spot. True story. And it really made a little bit of impression, to say the least, on the mother. She was in shock. And so they decided, maybe things have to change a little bit from then on. And I think eventually the families start becoming more religious, lighting candles, not only the yurtzeit type, regular candles, and they kiddush, whatever they started to do, and the family started to turn around. So you never know what one good act could lead, even in such a situation. Sometimes Hashem has to wake us up. It's a pretty drastic wake-up call here, you can imagine. Pretty drastic wake-up call, but sometimes it doesn't need to be so intense. So there's Hashem. Hopefully, Hashem will take us and lead us in the right path, and we'll be able to go where Hashem wants. So we don't need to be woken up with such a jarring fashion as Hashem. It is El, after all. That's what Hashem. Okay, so we are on Daf Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Samach Daled Amud Aleph. Right on top, third line from the top. Okay. That's my Gemara here. Delicate balancing act with the setup here. Okay, so we're discussing different cases here. Different cases brought in the Mishnah, Moredes, etc. And now the Gemara is going to bring a couple of examples and a couple of questions, and we're going to explain some of the other things in the Mishnah. So the coinage at the end, we'll talk about the different coins that are used there in the Mishnah. Okay, so the Gemara says the following. We had mentioned that a woman who says Mo'is alai, they ask her why she not want to cohabit, why she not want to have intercourse with her husband. She's refusing to. What's the reason? She says Mo'is alai. Not a case where she's trying to make the guy miserable. She's trying to, she wants, but he finds him repulsive. That's what she says. So in such a case, we said that eventually we lower ksuva, and assuming that's how we do it, and eventually until we take away her ksuva, her tosefes ksuva, additional ksuva, and even what she brought into the marriage, the dunya, the dowry, even the things the clothing that she brought in that's worn out, we discussed. So the discussion was, what about those clothing that was worn out? Does she get to keep it or not? So we said Rava, I believe it was, Rava said that he was mesubak, he was in doubt about it. We didn't come to a decisive conclusion about what's the story of those. We lower her the value of, and when she eventually gets divorced, she doesn't get to keep even. What does she not get to keep? What about those worn out garments that came as part of her dunya, as part of her dowry? Does she get to keep those when she leaves in under these circumstances, when she says Mo'is alai, her husband is repulsive to her and she wants to get divorced? So the Gemara says, Hashta de lo idmar lo hachi v'lo hachi. Now we didn't conclude it either way, didn't say like this or like that. So what's the case? Tafsa, if she goes in and grabs those worn out garments, lo mafkina mineh, we don't take it away for her. Lo tafsa la, if she didn't grab it, lo ayavina la, we don't give it to her. She's going to leave things as status quo. Because as a suffix in halacha, we often do that. We leave things as they are. Correct. This is 9/10 of the law. Yeah. So therefore, she grabbed them. She gets to keep them. We don't take it away from her. If she doesn't take them, we don't give it to her. And it continues. In this particular case, the Gemara says, there's this discussion amongst the Rishonim, but it seems to be Rashi. Others seems to say this is specifically referring to a woman who says Mo'is alai. She doesn't she's sort of repulsed by this fellow. She wants a divorce for that reason. In such a case, well, how do we handle it? Mishahinan la tresar yarchi shasa. We wait 12 months. In the meantime, we lower her ksuva weekly by 7, either dinar or the other currency, according to Rabbi Yehuda. And less lamazone mibal. During that period of time, she doesn't get the normal provisions, that doesn't get fed by the husband. I assume that also means she doesn't get her mal kesa, her spending money as well, etc. Doesn't say that, but I assume that's the case. During that period of time, she doesn't get that. She doesn't get fed by her husband, even though, if the husband's not feeding her, she gets to keep her earnings. But generally, the earnings point out that the earnings generally don't equal for the food, and they don't match up normally. Unless someone's very productive, sometimes it does, and you have extra. But so that's what happens. In this particular case, that's what we handle. In this particular case, when she says Mois alive, he's trying to repulsive. That's why she doesn't want to cohabit with him. That's how we handle it. We wait 12 months, try to convince her to go back, kind of work things out. If not, she reduce her ksuva by 7 dinar, let's say, according to the Tanakama, each week, a dinar a day, and she doesn't get fed by her husband like she normally would because she's acting in a rebellious fashion. Okay. Okay, so that's how we handle that. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to say another thing. Let me just take a drink here. Voice is going. Ready? I think it's probably most men would probably want. She wants a divorce. If he wants a divorce, then they divorce. It seems like that at least he partially wants to stay with her. He wants to some extent. I mean, we try to get them back together. That's what it seems to imply. Yeah. If they both want a divorce, like they're very set on it, then that's it. He doesn't support it either. Right, he doesn't exactly support her. So we're trying a lot of coercion here to get her to do it. A lot of okay. So continuing on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th line down. Right in the middle. Amar Rav Tumi Bar Kisna, Amar Shmuel. Rav Tumi Bar Kisna said the name of Shmuel as follows: Kosvin Igeres Morad al Arusa, then Kosvin Igeres Morad al Shmaras Yavam. They discuss what's called, literally the translate. We write a letter of rebellion. It's like an official document that the spouse rebelled for an Arusa. Like an Arusa, but we don't write it for a Yavam. So this needs a little bit of explanation. First of all, there's a concept that if a spouse doesn't necessarily mean the wife, it could be the husband too. If they're refusing to do their obligation, cohabit, to their spouse, we don't just find them, we write an official document saying that spouse X is rebelling against spouse Y. Spouse X has to lose ksuva, or if it's the man who's rebelling, the wife gains on their ksuva. I'll discuss the wife. It's a little bit easier. And so Shmuel said, or Rav Tuvi Bar Kisna said in the name of Shmuel, we write this official document. It's like a document that this rebellion took place and that she's owed or gets additional money, whatever the case may be, depending on if it's husband or wife. We write that for an arusa, like arusa, a woman who had the first stage of marriage but now refusing to move on to the second stage of marriage. So for her, the husband would have this letter written for her, for him. Her, it depends on the case. Could be the opposite, him, her, but not for a shomeris yavam. When a woman is in a state of yibam, the brother passed away. Now the wife falls to the brother. She refuses to do yibam. We'll discuss exactly that concept. Chalitza, yibam, how it works today. We'll talk more about that. So in that case, we don't write this document for her. It's what Shmuel says. Don't write the document, even though technically she could lose it. She has a ksuva coming to her in that case of a yibam, because from her first husband, or second husband, from the first husband's property. But we don't. So only that document of rebellion that says you get this official document that your spouse rebelled against you doesn't want to cohabit, you get to lose or gain on the ksuva. That's only written in the case of an arusa, not in the case of a yavam. So we never saw that distinction before, and that's what the Gemara is going to ask. We said that every type of case is a case of like marida, of doing a rebellion, whether it's a yavam or a arusa to the only heirs in that, or a full marriage in the suin, etc., etc. We never saw the distinction before, and the Gemara is going to ask that question right now. So the Gemara says, "Meisvei," ask you a question from a brisa that we just had the last 2 days. Achas li arusa v'nesua. These are all examples of cases of women in different states who, if they refuse to cohabit with their husband, they're considered a moredes. They're considered a woman who's rebelling and not fulfilling her obligations to her husband. Achas li arusa, whether it's an arusa, a woman who had the first stage of marriage and refuses to move on to the second stage of marriage, v'nesua, a woman who's married, fully married, and refuses to cohabit with her husband. Afilu nida, even if she's a nida now, she refuses to have intercourse with her husband now, but it's a long-term plan she has. She's saying that she's not going even after she's no longer a nida. Afilu chola, even if she's sick enough that not so sick that they can't cohabit, but sick that not legitimately so, as you say, that she could cohabit and doesn't want to. Afilu shomeres yavam, even a shomeres yavam, even if a woman whose husband passed away didn't have children, she falls to her brother, his brother, to have yibum, and she's refusing. That case is also a case of moredes, a case of a woman who's rebelling and not wanting to cohabit, not moving on to the next stage of the relationship, and that's the moredes. So we see that's a case of a rebellious woman. So how come Shmuel says when it comes to a shomeres yavam, this woman whose husband passed away and she falls to her husband's brother for yibum, and she refuses, we don't write a geras mara. We don't write this letter, this official Bezdin letter that says that she refuses to go on to cohabit, to marry the yavam. How come we don't? It seems like it's an equal type of rebellion. How come by Shmuel said by shomeres yavam, this case where the husband passed away and this woman falls to her brother-in-law, or her husband's brother, we don't, according to Shmuel, write such a letter in the Bezdin. It seems like a full rebellion. So the Gemara says lo kasha. Now there's a distinction. It's not a question. There's a distinction between the two cases. Kancha tavahu, kancha tavahi. Who is the person here who's refusing? Who's the person who's requesting? Who wants to have to cohabit, to continue on with the ibum or to get nesuin? So the case is like this. The case that Shmuel brought down. Let's do the brisa first. The case of the brisa, where we said the case of Yibum is also a case of Ariba. It's a case of rebellion. That's when he wants to marry her. He wants to marry her, as Gemara will explain, is a case where he wants to fulfill Puravu, wants to fulfill the mitzvah of to have children. That mitzvah, in its pure sense, is on the man, not on the woman. So therefore, the case of the brisa is talking about when the man wants to go along, have Yibum, wants to marry the deceased brother's wife, so it can continue on the name, and so therefore she is preventing him from fulfilling Puravu, for having the mitzvah of having children. So therefore, he writes this letter of rebellion. But when it's the case the other way around, which is the case of Shmuel is talking about, when she wants to have the Yibum, but he refuses. So therefore, since he's not preventing her from the mitzvah of Puravu, he doesn't have the pure sense, the mitzvah of having children. So therefore, we don't write this letter of rebellion. I mean, you still reduce, like Rifa notes points out, we still reduce it. Reduce the amount of the ksuva, or actually, increase the amount of the ksuva because he's rebelling, not her. Right, but that's the case. That's the difference between the two. Difference is they're talking about different cases. Who is the one refusing? The man and the woman. Says that's the way we answer that question.
make for this woman.
Right.
So
right.
It can't be a general statement.
Right. A lot of these cases are not blanket across statements like chola, a woman who's very ill and really doesn't feel well. You can't expect her to cohabit, but if she flat out refuses ever again cohabiting, that's different. Now, Rusa also, they're like you said, there are cases that
this Rusa, she goes to the suit.
Right.
So, for whatever reason, she decides to fancy them on the first day.
Right.
So she comes this one.
Right. There has to be some.
There's a get.
A get, yeah. Yeah, she needs a get from her reason, correct? But it has to be, if it's not legitimate enough, I imagine, then we want her to stay. If she doesn't stay, then she's entitled to the get at some point, but she loses her ksuba at some point. It's almost monetary, really. It's a matter of time and money. It depends on the case. It's a good point you're making. You're not locked in for life. A woman who wants a divorce is not locked in for life. If she says moisalai, it's almost a legitimate excuse. And we try to get them back together. But this is complex. I didn't fully look up the halacha yet. It's complex. Not so simple. Again, we're making very blanket statements about very complex issues, but the Gemara has to say general principles. Okay. So the Gemara continues, the Amar Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi Amar Shmuel. Like we said the distinction between who is requesting the Yibum. Amar Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi Amar Shmuel, like Rav Tachlifa bar Avimi said in the name of Shmuel, Tava who, if he says wants to go ahead with the Yibum, go marry the deceased brother's wife, Niskakin lo. Tava he ain't Niskakin lo. But if she is the one who wants to go ahead and marry the brother of her deceased husband, we don't get involved. We don't advocate on her behalf. What he does, we do it. Why? Because we said when he wants to, they're doing the mitzvah. Even in particular, it's not just puravu, not just to have a child, it's also to carry on the name of the deceased brother. That's his obligation to have children. Our obligation to have children. So we don't step in. We do step in and then lower the ksuba if she doesn't, but we don't step in to write this letter. That's the distinction. Okay, so the Gemara asks, "B'may ukimta lahad Shmuel." This properly. Sorry. Okay. B'may ukimta the Shmuel. So how do we establish, and what do we say the case is of Shmuel? How do we establish it? Because what did Shmuel say? Shmuel says we don't write the Geras Morad for a Shomeres Yevon, for a woman who refuses to have Yibum to her deceased husband's brother to carry on his name. We don't write this letter, and official letter that she's rebelling. She still loses her parts of her ksuba, but we don't write the official letter, as noted. So what's the case talking about? So obviously the case is talking about, as we said before, when the man, the brother-in-law, wants the Yibum and she refuses. It must be that he's requesting. He's the one who wants to go forward with it. Okay, but my ukimta, how do we say the case is according to Shmuel? Vishatava he. It's the case, I'm sorry, backward. Vishatava he, when she is the one who wants it. She's the one who wants it. Sorry, I said it backwards. Kshatava he, when she is the one who wants the Yibum, because she wants the Yibum, he doesn't Yibum to carry on the name, to marry the brother-in-law, but the brother-in-law doesn't want to. So therefore, we do push it to some extent. We don't write the official letter, but she doesn't have proof. She's not required to have. She's not the one who. She's not the one preventing him from proof. He doesn't want it. So what is the lashon? High kosvin igeres marda ala rusa. So is the correct terminology used by Shmuel or we mentioned the name of Shmuel. High kosvin igeres marda ala rusa liarusa. I'm sorry. High kosvin igeres marda ala rusa liarusa mi boy. It shouldn't say that we write igeres marad on the Arusa, about the Arusa. It said li Arusa. It should say for the Arusa. In the two cases Shmuel mentioned, the case of Arusa, one woman the woman the case of the Arusa or the case of the case of Yavam, for example, the case of Shmaras Yavam, she is the one who wants it, but he doesn't want it. So it shouldn't say that. Let me just find it. So it shouldn't say kos v'negeras mord or ein kos v'negeras mord al Shmaras Yavam al Arusa. It's a li Arusa. We're writing it to her because she's the one who wants it. She's the one. By the case of Arusa, she wants it. She gets it. By the case of Shemaras Yavam, she wants to marry the Yavam. We say we don't write it for her. Why don't we write it for her? Because she's not preventing him from having children. He's the one who's preventing. But it should say Le'arus, we're writing it for her, or don't write it for her. She's the one who wants it, according to Shmuel here. That's the case. The terminology seems a bit off. Not that to her, it should be for her, not about her. So we say halo kasha. It's not a question. Tani Le'arus. So change the terminology to say li'arus. Yeah, li'arus. You write it for her. She wants it. She's the one who wants to have yibam or carry on the arusa to nesuin. So write it for her on her behalf. Fine. Okay. So the Gemara is going to now within Shmuel is going to ask a few questions. Shmuel says,
who is against the marriage, the Ibama or the?
I think the depends on the case. Case that Shmuel said, in the case of Shmuel, it seems that she is the one who wants it. And he doesn't want it. In the case of the Brisa at this point, we're saying, the case of the Brisa, correct? It's a case where he wants it, she doesn't want it. That's a distinction. So now we're learning the case of Shmuel. Well, maybe it is, but one of them is not acting properly. Could be a match made in yeah, they could do. We're going to talk about that. It's going to weigh heavily in the discussion we're coming up with. Chalitza may be the preferred option. So we're going to keep on redefining this, redefining Shmuel, redefining the Brisa, until we get to that point. We're bringing Chalitza already, and then yeah, okay. Okay. So the question is like this. Somebody's going to ask a question. Maishna, this is the third to last narrow line, last two words on it. Maishna shomeres yavam. So Shmuel said two cases, right? There's two cases, the name of Shmuel. One is shomeres yavam and one is an arusa. By arusa, we say we do write her the letter. By shomeres yavam, we say we don't write her the letter. So why is that distinction between the two? She's the one who wants it. So by Arusa, we do write her a letter that he's rebelling. And by Shemaras Yavam, we don't write a letter that he's rebelling against her. Why is the distinction? Ma'ishna Shemaras Yavam. Why is there a distinction? Why is it specifically by Shemaras Yavam? The law Amrinan law zeal. Ma'ishna Shemaras Yavam the law Amrinan law. The law. Sorry, I read that wrong. Read it again. Ma'ishna Shemaras Yavam the law. How come by Shemaras Yavam we don't write her this letter? The Amrinan law zeal. Lo nifkadim. They tell her, no, go. You're not commanded to fill peravu. But why don't we write it by Shemaras Yavam? She wants to have it. He doesn't. Why are we not writing the letter that he's rebelling? Loses part of it. He adds on to the Kesuvos, but don't write this letter because she's not technically obligated in peravu. So we tell her, go. You don't have this mitzvah peravu. We don't have to take it to that extent. He is not preventing you from your mitzvah, so we don't have to step into that extent. The ksuba she has from the previous. Well, so the Rishonim say that we're talking about. I remember it was. I don't remember what it said. There is a ksuba, a pre-existing ksuba from the previous husband, from the brother, and that ksuba comes out of his previous brother's estate. So that can be reduced. That can be. Yeah, it's a good question. Good question. It's the Rishonim get that. No, it's a good question. The Rishonim discuss it. It's a good question. Good question. Okay. So, Ma'ishno Shemaras Yavam the law. How come Shemaras Yavam we say we don't worry about going to that extent, writing her official letter that her potential spouse the brother-in-law is rebelling. Why not? We tell her, go, you're not commanded the mitzvah pruvu. He's not holding you back from having children. You don't have a specific command. He's holding him back. He's not commanded to have the full extent of pruvu. So he says, Arusa Nami. So to the same case by the Arusa. Shmuel said by an Arusa, it's quoted named Shmuel, by an Arusa, a woman who wants to move on from the first stage of marriage to the second stage of marriage. The husband refuses, his husband. Nami, name Allah, we should say to her, Zil, lo mifkadet. We tell her the same thing. Why does she get? Shmuel says she does get this Geras Bar. She gets an official letter from Bezdin that her husband doesn't want to move on to Nisuin, to the second stage of marriage. How come there too? It's the same principle, same idea. We'll just tell her we don't have to take it to that extent because he's not holding you back. You don't have the mitzvah perudu to have children, so we don't need to write this letter, but we do. Why is there a distinction? The same idea, principle seems to apply to both. Ella, so we're going to try a different distinction. We're going to try a different distinction. Why? Well, I see that it's not going to go, but a different distinction. Why that Arusa, we write her a letter to say that he's not going on to the next stage of marriage, but by Yibum they don't. Why is there a distinction? Ella Iba Machmas Taina Amra Ba'ina Chutra Liyada Umar Lekfura. She comes and says, I want to get married, I want to continue. Why? Because I want to have children, not because I have a mitzvah to have children, but I want a son who's going to take care of me, to lean on in my old, to be like, a staff in my old age. As Rashi says, somewhere about halfway down the Rashi, Chutra liyada, Rotzani shieli ben, sheyachzik biyodi, this skunasi. I want someone v'ashen alav, nishan alav, and I want a son that to help me walk when I get older. B'yom mosi bereni, and when I pass away, to bury me. It's like the terminology in the Gemara is mara lekur, is like some sort of digging something, whatever it is, digging thing. I think that's what the term means. Mara So she's saying, I'm not want a child to continue with his marriage to Peru. I know I'm not commanded having children in the pure sense, but she says that she wants a son to take care of me in my old age, in terms of help me out and to take care of the burial when the time comes after 120. She says so that she can say. So that's it. By Narusa, that's why she has a legitimate claim. Because I want to move on to the next stage of marriage so I can have children to take care of me in my old age, son specifically. And so she says, so therefore he's holding me back. We should write this letter. We do. But that same principle would apply by Yibam, right? Shemeres Yibam also. Shemeres Yavam, the same thing. She never had a child. That's why Yibam never had a child to this husband. That's why the Yibam, the mitzvah of Yibam is there. But Ba Machmas Taina, she has the same claim. She says, I want to have a child also. I want to continue on with the Yibam, so I can have a child, so that can take care of me in my old age. That's also a legitimate taina. So how come there we don't write this letter for her that the husband is not agreeing to go on with the Yibam? Right. It's an interesting mitzvah for Shabbos Yitzra is also another mitzvah that does apply to women. It's a little complicated, but the primary mitzvah is for a man. It's one of this, in my humble opinion, it's a very strange thing because a woman carries a baby around pregnant for 9 months, goes through this life-threatening thing called through labor and delivery, then sleepless nights, nursing the baby, caring for children, the primary care for the child for the next. The mother never has a, a Jewish mother is only as happy as her least happy child. Their expression was always worrying about her children the rest of her life, and yet it's the man's mitzvah. She does all the work. It's like not all the work. Does the primary work. It's a very interesting thing. Thank Hashem, maybe that's the intention of Hashem Zisha, that we get the mitzvah and she does all the work. I don't know. It's like a strange thing, Kum Sara Agra. According to the effort you put in, obviously you get reward, but most of the reward probably. But it's a very strange thing. Anyway, so So we have to explain what. So we're back to try to explain the distinction between the Shmuel and the Brisa. How come Shmuel says we don't write this letter uh, of rebellion by case of someone's refusing to go on with the Yibum, and the Brisa seems to imply it's a regular case of rebellion. We would write a letter. So what's the distinction between the two? Ella, Idividi or Idividi, Shetavahu. Both the case of Shmuel and the case of Brisa is when he's the one who wants the Yibum. He wants to continue on the Yibum in both cases. The case that Shmuel is talking about and the Brisa. Hello, Kasha. So why? How come Shmuel says you don't write this letter that she's rebelling and by Yibum and not wanting to go with the Yibum, and Brisa seems to imply you do. Kan lichlotz v'kan liyabim. One case is talking about when he wants to do chalitza, and one case is called the case of Yibum. In other words, I have to give a little. I have to jump ahead, say the answer to really make sense out of this. So I will. So by the Bryce is talking about a case of chalitza, which we'll see is actually more ideal today. That's the ideal way. That's the way we do it. Not ideal. That's the way we do it. In most kilos, there are probably some that still do Yibum, I think, but that's the ideal way to do it today. So therefore, if the man wants to do chalitza, we help him out. That's the primary mitzvah. That's the primary thing he's supposed to do today. That's what the Bryce is talking about. She was refusing to do chalitza. We step in and we write this letter that she's refusing. But if it's a case where he wants a yibum, which is a less preferred method, then we don't step in. He's not doing, and we don't write this letter that she's rebelling for him because he's not doing the preferred option. Let's read that. Lo kasha kan lichlot v'kan liyabim. One case, the case of the Brisa, when he wants to do, he's requesting chalitza. And one case is when he's requesting yibum. Dam Rav Pedas, Rav Yochanan, Rav Pedas, son of the name of Yochanan, Tava lichlot niskakilo, Tava liyabim ein niskakilo. That if he's requesting, he is attempting to do chalitza, we step in to help him. We work on his behalf. We advocate for him. But by yibum, we don't. So the Gemara says, "Ma'ishna liyabim delo." Why? We have a few answers here until we get to the final one. Ma'ishna liyabim delo. What's the distinction between yibum and chalitza? I told you already the final answer, but we haven't gotten there yet. Ma'ishna liyibum delo. How come by yibum delo? Just highlight this better. Let's take it down to the answer. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Ma'ishna liyabim. Say it. Ma'ishna liyabim below. How come if he's requesting yibum, we don't? He wants to do yibum. He wants to actually get married to his deceased brother's wife. We don't step in. We don't write this letter. Why? Because we could tell him, why, what do you want to do? You want to perform pruruvu? You want to have children? You can marry another woman. You may have this zika, this sort of pull for this woman that she's sort of bound to you to some extent. But you're a man, you could have two wives, technically. You'll marry someone else, have children through him. She's not holding you back. We don't need to write you a letter, even though she's preventing him from fulfilling that, mitzvah of carrying on his brother's name. But in terms of that, in terms of pruruvu, in terms of having children, she's not holding him back. She may be sort of bound to him, as I said, but he's free to marry and have more children. So he said, sorry, lichlotz nami. If he's requesting chalitza, we can also tell him, we can tell him, zil v'nasav isachriti, go marry another woman. She may be holding you back from chalitza. She's refusing to do chalitza, but that bind, the connection to you and her, that requires chalitza or yibam, that's not holding you back. You can also still go marry someone else, and have children. Fulfill your obligation that way. So what's the distinction? That's not a good distinction between chalitza and yibam. Ella, rather, what's the distinction between yibam and chalitza? How come when the man's requesting to do chalitza and she refuses, we step in, we write this letter, igeras marad, that she's rebelling, the Bezdin writes such a letter. When he's requesting yibam, we don't. What's the distinction? Ella da'amar kivan da'gidabe. Oh, this is not the final answer yet. Sorry. Ella da'amar kivan da'gidabe lo kayav le'achriti. By when she wants to do chalitza yibam, Even the Agdebe, since she's bound, there's like a zika, there's like this halachic bind that's created when the brother passed away, that this woman can't marry anyone until she has either chalitza yibam. That bound, like aguda, is like a agida besh is bound. They lo kayav lachriti. No one else is going to want to marry. Hachanami. So too, kivin the erdeve lo kayav lachriti. Whether it's chalitza or yibam, there's still the bind there. Whether he wants to do yibam or he wants to do chalitza and she's refusing, she's still bound, right? Whether it's a bind. In either case, a second woman is not going to want to walk into such a situation where there's either when he wants to do yibam, there's a potential second wife in the picture, and chalitza, there's still this whole court case, this din going on that she's stepping into. It's not the ideal, you know, state of a fairy tale marriage. It's like, it's kind of like, I know the good example is like, uh, it's like marrying, when there's a former marriage and the child has the husband and wife has stepchildren. It's complicated. So this is more complicated. So that's why. So the Gemara says, like, what's the distinction between the two? Why is there more reason here or there? It's the same thing. Why does Bezin step in when he wants to do chalitza? Bezin steps in and say, oh, you're preventing a man from doing chalitza. You have to take action. Write this letter. She's rebelling. When it comes to Yibum, we don't take that action. She still loses her Ksuva money, but as Rishna said, but we don't step in. Ella, what's the distinction between the two cases? Ella, ID, so rather we step in like this. Ella, ID, you want to say it? Be either case, both the case of the Brisa, which says by Yibum, seems to imply that by Yibum, she's refusing to do Yibum. We do write the letter. And according to Shmuel, we don't write the letter. What's the distinction? What the case is? Both cases of Shmuel and the case of Brisa, that both cases where the man's requesting it and he wants Yibam. So both are the same. Both wants Yibam. He wants Yibam in both cases. So why both cases are identical? How come in Shmuel's case we say we don't write the letter that she's rebelling, and the Brisa seems to imply we do write it? Below kasha, not a kasha. We're talking about different time periods in the history of halacha. Kan Commissioner Rishona, the Kan Commissioner Achrona. One's like the original halacha way we learned our tradition, and one's the later way when things changed. It's non, as we learned in a Mishnah, later on here, earlier, sorry. Mitzvah yibum kodemes la mitzvah chalitza. In principle, the mitzvah of yibum, to perform yibum, so you're carrying on the name of your deceased brother, it takes precedence over chalitza. That's the proper way to do it. Chalitza is a way out, so to speak. It's a way to sever the bond between the brother-in-law and sister-in-law. Rishona, shayu mischavnin l'shum mitzvah. When they had the proper intentions, they were doing this act, this marriage, solely to carry on the name of the deceased brother. They would do it. That would be the primary mitzvah. To do yibum. Achshav, nowadays, she'ein miskavin l'shum mitzvah, so they're not properly having the proper intentions solely to carry on the name of the brother. Amru mitzvah chalitza kodemes mitzvah yibum. They say chalitza is the kodemes, takes precedence. It's the ideal way rather than yibum, than act of yibum. That's what the Gemara says. So therefore, yes. Well, it's all established that it says preference. It doesn't say we don't do it here. It says it's the ideal. You're supposed to do chalitza. Yibum is not preferred. Let's say you can't do yibum. So at some point, I don't know. At one point, we stopped doing yibum. Yeah. Yibum. Yeah. Right. In Morocco. In Morocco. In Morocco, yeah.
Father God, husband God, there's a simple father. He has to to halacha, and it's up to her to say yes or no. If she wants to carry on and yes, it doesn't really matter. But it's is it halacha or not?
Back then,
Back then,
the ideal way was do yibum. We want both parties to do yibum to get married and to carry on the name. Yeah. Right, the sons, right.
but now it's not halacha.
It's still, people can't do the mitzvah properly. If people can't do the mitzvah properly, it's almost like an illicit relationship, so to speak. Not really, but it has a aspect to it of that. Therefore, we say we do chalitza, which is also an acceptable way to do it. So it says in the Torah, if they don't want, chalitza. Well, hakim shem chicha. They do it in a very specific way. They have to make the shoe in a very, 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 very specific way. Yeah, very. Right, right. It has to be done properly. As the Gemara says, Mishnah Mishana was a long time ago, long, long time ago.
And the concept of the feet doesn't work for the full. The court help her, what she wants. It doesn't work for her. They can't help her.
Yeah. Yeah. Childless. Yeah, it's not unfortunate. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's. This is the last piece here. It's a little bit more technical. That's part of it. Okay, so we are on to the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the bottom. Ad masahil poches. We said that every week that she refuses to him. But first, the Mishnah said every week that she refuses and continues in her rebellion against her obligation, refuses to cohabit, they reduce her ksuba by either 7 dinars, a coinage we're more familiar with, and Rabbi Huda says sheva trapikin. Pronounce that right? So the Gemara is going to analyze this coin. What is this coin, the trapikin? Analyze the whole situation of the fines. So my tir pa'ikin, what is this tir pa'ikin? Amrav Sheshes astira. It is, as Rashi says, Sela Medina. The Sela, that coin, of Medina, the common one. We'll see there's Medina coins, like the common used coins in the land, Australia. And then there was the ones in Sur, in Tyre, Tyre, in Lebanon, as Rashi says. That they were 8 times as valuable, I believe it is, as something on next. Yeah. Anyway, so this is yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see it on the next page. Yeah. Yeah, sell, I believe it's shekel. Shekel. Yes, percentage. Oh, wait, so I don't know. I don't know exactly. There are books on these things if you want to look them up. Okay. I'm going to show astira, the kama astira. How much is a percentage of silver? Also interesting. Interesting. So part, 8 part. Interesting. So it's a completely different coin. Yeah. Right. It's a soft metal. It doesn't need something good or something. Yeah. Right. That's the issue with the silver dollars and coin. How much? 92 now. Oh, so that's better for in the bed. Uh, uh, interesting. Right. Very low quality silver coin. Yeah. 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 Easy to make. Yes, yeah. Like the yeah. Right. Very cool. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So this was the Tarapikin or Istara, where the standard poor quality, less valuable coin. Hakama Stira, Palga de Zuza. It was half of a zuz, zuz suri, which is from the tire from up north, present Lebanon, which was Rasha's 6 ma'a kesef. So the tarapikin were 3 ma'os. So let's just continue. Tani Nami Hachi, Rabbi Huda Amar Shlosha Terapikin, 6 of the Terapikin, Shein Tisha Ma'in, which is like 3 ma, and Ma V'cheti L'chol Yom. So on each of the 6 days, we would come out with 1.5. She would, according to Rabbi Huda, she would reduce her ksuva by 1.5 ma, which is a total of 9, which is 3 Terapikin. This is 9 ma. Which is not 6 terapikin. I'm confused there. So Amalei Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef the Shmuel. So now I was going to jump off to this next discussion. So you'll have a minute. Amar Rabbi Chia Bar Shmuel. So Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef asked Shmuel, Ma'ishna ihu yavina love the Shabbos, or Ma'ina ihi the lo yavina love the Shabbos. You'll notice that the amount we reduce for a woman who rebels, and now we add for a man who rebels, not the same. That the cheshbon is that for the woman who rebels, we reduce her ksuba every day, including Shabbos. The man who rebels, we add on to her ksuba only every day but Shabbos. So why is there a distinction between that? So we say ihu the osfi kamosve mechse kashar Shabbos. I skipped a word here. Sorry. When you're getting additional and adding on, so that looks like Schar Shabbos. But either Osifi called most of Mechsik doesn't look like Schar Shabbos. When you add on, it does look like. In other words, for her, when we reduce it, when you're reducing, it doesn't look like you're getting paid for your work on Shabbos for getting work on Shabbos. And there's no work involved. But when you add on to it, when you're adding on to the amount, when she rebels, when you add on to him, so it looks like he's gaining on Shabbos. Therefore, we only do it 6 days of the week. So we'll go over that last point again, that measurement again, that question. So it leads into the next question also. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us. And we will pick it up tomorrow, God willing.
Thank you.